Right, have a seat, Sus.
Thank you.
Suzanne and I have been friends for a number of years, but for the sake of all of you, can you just introduce yourself, Sus?
Yes, get my microphone. Is that okay? You hear me? So my name's Suzanne Algeo. I'm meant to have a clicker with photos.
We're so organised.
This is the only bit I can do without my notes. I know who I am. So my name's Suzanne Algeo. I'm married to Paul. I've got a wee boy called Zachary and two stepchildren called Paul and Chelsea. So you've got a wee family photo there to look at.
So part of our conferences over the last few years, we've done this kind of format because I think it's quite good for you just to meet some of the committee and some people that we've had. So obviously our theme today is hills and valleys. So Suzanne is just going to share with us and you're going to start your journey when just before you turned 30?
Yeah, so just before I turned 30, I started to feel quite unwell. I'd been going to the gym, I was quite fit and active, but I'd started to feel really dizzy. I felt like I was going to pass out. I just wasn't feeling good at all. I had been to the doctors and had lots of different tests, and I was diagnosed with a severely overactive thyroid and also a heart condition called long QT syndrome, which was an inherited condition that my gran also had.
How did you feel receiving that diagnosis?
It was tough. In some ways, I think when you've been feeling unwell and you get a diagnosis, sometimes that's helpful because you think there's a reason for things. But I was feeling so unwell physically, and when I was diagnosed with my heart, the doctor was very blasé. So literally when I was in, they're like, oh, you've got this condition. You know when footballers just drop dead in the field? Yeah, that's the condition you've got. So not very tactful. And obviously in me, that then set off a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear. I had to avoid certain triggers. They told me that I couldn't do anything to raise your heart rate, which, you know, in normal life is very difficult. I was to avoid cold water and exercise, and it was 2 days before my 30th birthday. I had booked to do an assault course in Loch Lomond, and I was going to Lanzarote to an exercise resort. So needless to say, all my birthday plans were cancelled, and that's when my anxiety really started to increase. I had in my head that I was just going to drop, you know, because I'd heard those words, it made me so scared. I was scared to go out by myself. I was scared to not have someone with me that knew about my condition and would know what to do if I took unwell. Yeah, it was a dark few months and it was life-altering. You know, we're so used to being what we're able to do, and when that's taken from you, then I think that really affects you as well. I had a lot of panic attacks. My mum, who is my best friend, she's amazing, she walked through everything with me, but I couldn't leave the house without her. I was at the point she literally sat by my bed while I fell asleep because I was so anxious and so scared. And I guess I remember feeling like it's not going to get better, like this is life now, and that was quite scary. I was put on medication, and with lots of prayer and lots of support from people, I started to adjust to a new way of normal. But I think it was really during that time that I realised what a big part fear played in my life.
And no wonder, like you can understand that. Can you tell us a wee bit more about that fear?
So I'd had quite a lot of loss in my life with loved ones, relationships, and now my health, and I think alongside those was the fear of what else is going to happen, you know, what else can go wrong. You know, I've seen this firsthand, so I know things happen. I became a bit controlled by the what if, you know, what if that happens, what if this happens, and that could consume me, and I was an overthinker. But even though I was an overthinker, I knew that most of my thoughts were crazy. You know, I knew it was irrational and it was, I might say, stupid, but because of that, I kept it in a lot of the time, so I wouldn't be openly saying, you know, I was worrying about this or worrying about that. So just trying to suck it up, really, and keep going and keep pressing forward. I think to give you an example of the extent of my fear and how real it was to me, I went on a mission trip with my auntie. We went to India. and I was terrified of flying. But my fear was to the point that I genuinely thought that we would have an accident and that would be the end. It was so consuming for me. And to prove that, my concern was always about the people around me, the people that loved me. I thought, if anything happens to me, how does that impact them and how does that affect them? And I guess that feels like a responsibility when you don't keep well, you know, the awareness of the impact on others. But my concern was that my family wouldn't know how much they meant to me. So I arranged for flowers to be sent while I was in the air going to India. So all my family were getting bouquets delivered, telling them how much I loved them. And it's ridiculous, you know, but for me that gave me that reassurance of, do you know what, they know I love them, and so even if that happens, then so be it. So yeah, a bit crazy.
It sounds super tough. Can you tell us a bit, where was your faith in that season?
Sorry. Got a noise here. Okay. So I would say I had quite a strong faith. I've always kind of held on to my faith and cried out to God. I'm a bit of a panic prayer, you know, whenever anything happens, I'm like, God, help me, God, you know, be with me, or show me what to do. But I think when you know the Bible, you know that the Bible says, do not fear. The Bible says, be anxious for nothing. And so in some ways that became a battle because I was holding on to my faith, but I felt like I was failing because I wasn't trusting enough. And I had already a bit of a opinion that I'm not good enough. And I think that just continued to feed into that. I was involved with Wheels in Motion, the soot bus, which we did, you know, right through this whole season. I continued to do that. There was fear associated with that as well. You know, we're working with addiction. Sometimes it's quite volatile. But God never told me to stop. And I think in some ways I was quite annoyed in that season. I thought, can I not just have a rest from this? But he told me to persevere. And I guess now I can look back and think I'm so grateful that I'm still in that work and still in that ministry. And the other thing was, I've not put my photo up, sorry. My other thing was worship music. That was such a gift for me. Just lyrics of songs and things that I could just say that even when I wasn't feeling, they almost became prayers. You know, they became the things that you would say, I'll praise you in the storm, or, you know, I'll rise above the storm, you'll carry me. All these things that became such an anchor for me to hold on, even when I was struggling.
So that was all in 2012. So what has life looked like since then?
So there have been amazing hills and there have been many valleys. I met and married Paul in 2017. That was a hill, by the way, just to But in 2019, it was a year of, I love Ephesians 3:20, where it says he'll give us immeasurably more than we can ever ask for or imagine. And 2019 felt like that year for me. I had always wanted to be a mum, and it was something that I had kind of tucked away and thought that's not going to be my thing. You know, I had wanted it probably for so long. I think we know what our heart's desire is, but I'd kind of told myself I was happy as I was and accepted that wasn't going to be the case. So when I fell pregnant, then that was something that was amazing and just the best thing ever. I loved being pregnant, and yeah, that was a real gift. Zachary was born in February 2020, and he is my joy. We were also looking to move house, so, you know, these things might sound nothing, but for me they were significant, and I think that's, you know, whatever's happening in your life, it matters to you and it's significant to you. So we were looking to move house. We had a lovely wee 2-bedroom bungalow, but we wanted just an extra room when we were having Zachary and thought that would be helpful. So we were looking to move house and God gave us 3 extra rooms. So we ended up getting a beautiful home that had a space for a study to allow us to do Wheels in Motion things. And 6 weeks after that, we went into lockdown and Paul had to work from home for a long time and still does. So actually, you know, God was providing for our needs, even though we didn't realise that was what we needed. And the other thing in 2019 was I had been working in oral health improvement for a while. That was my job. I was a dental nurse and then worked in the improvement side of things. But I'd been quite unsettled. I'd been applying for other jobs and just been unsuccessful and getting a bit fed up with that as well. Like, why am I not getting something? And then I saw a job advertised for chaplaincy and staff care in the hospital. I read the job description and I didn't meet the criteria, and I thought that's a shame because that would be amazing. But when I contacted the person involved, they said just apply anyway. So I applied, they interviewed me, and I got the job. And that was really immeasurably more than I could ask for or imagine, because I knew on paper I didn't fit the bill. But I think that's what's so amazing about God. Like, even when we don't have what the world says we need, actually, if he wants us to be somewhere, then he makes it happen. And I had no doubt that he opened that door, because I know how the NHS work, and I knew that I shouldn't have been in there. But I have been. I was able to do my postgrad certificate in healthcare chaplaincy, and it is just such an honour to be able to walk with people in their darkest times. So, just so grateful for that.
That was a pretty awesome year, 2019. I actually remember Suze telling us when she was pregnant with Zachary. Ruthie, Suze and I were in Grow, and I squealed. And she was like, shh. I have a vivid memory of that. So that was an awesome year. And then in 2020, wee Zachary was born. Can you tell us more about that next season that you went into?
So, as you can see, Zachary was born. And because of my heart condition, he also had to be tested for long QT syndrome. And it was confirmed within the first few days that he did have it as well. I knew that that was a possibility, and yet it's so different when you're holding this little 6-pound baby. You know, I was so aware, I just felt he was so vulnerable, and I wanted to protect him, and so limited in what you can do. So that was him, and I think he was 2 days old getting his first ECG. He was a wee superstar, and it always has been. With all medical things, he has been amazing. But after we got home from hospital, they planned to see him after about a month in Glasgow to see about medication. But I got home from hospital, and 2 days later, a consultant phoned and said, listen, we need to readmit him, we need to get him in hospital. His QT is longer than what we anticipated. So we need to start him on medication, and we need to monitor that to make sure that he responds okay. And again, I don't know what it is with me and doctors that are a bit tactless, but he said that also means he's an increased chance of a clot death. And I think when they tell you those things, you know, you've got a brand new baby, a first time mum, and it's quite overwhelming. So fear, you know, back with a vengeance. So that was a day I cried a lot. I remember going into hospital with him, and just the consultant was talking to me, and I just kept crying through it. I couldn't really get that under control. But he was started on medication, he took it really well. I was breastfeeding, so those first few weeks and months are a blur. I was having to set alarms to make sure he got his milk, then an alarm for his medicine, so you were up all night. And then he would be sick, so then you're worrying, has he had enough medicine? What's going to happen there? So yeah, it was scary. And when I was already had this predisposition to be afraid, I think it really contributed to that.
I mean, Zachary was an absolute trooper, and so were you. Like, it was a really, really tough time, but you kept going, you had your head, and you kept trusting. And Zachary is just absolutely adorable, absolutely adorable. Can you now tell us, well, what's the next part of the journey that you'd like to share with us?
So I'm continuing with the health theme. I had a really healthy pregnancy. I loved being pregnant. I loved having a belly that was allowed to be there. So that was my favourite part. But not long after having him, I started to have strange palpitations. So I'd started running again, but my heart was just like doing weird flip-flops. It was bizarre. And it was getting worse and worse. So eventually I went to A&E to get checked out. They admitted me to hospital, and that became really stressful because it was lockdown by this time. So they took me through to the ward, and I was aware that Zachary was out in the car with Paul. He'd been exclusively breastfed, so in your mind you're thinking, how are we going to work this? What's going to happen? Thankfully the hospital were really helpful, and they allowed me to have Zachary in with me, so I was so grateful for that. But I was also not well, so see, being alone and having this precious wee baby as their sole carer, and the nurses weren't allowed to come near you, they couldn't touch him, so you're trying to juggle him over the leads and all of that. But But again, he was a great wee boy. He was so resilient, and he hardly made a peep, so he didn't cause any huge disturbance. But again, for me, it was fear. You know, when the doctors and nurses are kind of watching the machines and looking, and you can see they're trying to figure out what's going on, but when no one's actually telling you, then that is really, really scary. And wait till I see where I am. Yeah, I had a lovely doctor, and he had said they were looking out for dangerous arrhythmias. That's what they were checking for. And this time he was really good at explaining things, but I'll never forget, he said to me, these rhythms could be not compatible with life. You know, so it was that, it wasn't the way the other doctor had spoke to me, but he was still saying, this can be dangerous. If this rhythm goes the way it's going, then it is dangerous. I had been admitted 3 times before Zachary was 5 months old. And yeah, it was just an awareness of the seriousness of the situation, I guess. The 3rd time I was admitted was to change my medication. They phoned me on a Thursday and said, we want to bring you in on a Friday. We want to change your medication, and it means you have to stop breastfeeding. And that again was a massive blow for me, because I loved breastfeeding. It was important to me. I knew the benefits. But one of the benefits is it helps reduce the risk of cot death. And so for me, there was a control thing, you know, this is something I can do that helps to keep my wee boy safe. There he is. And so, yeah, that was another really emotional step to get through. Sorry. Yeah, again, what the doctor said at that point was, we want you to see your wee boy grow up, and we feel this medicine is necessary. So again, you know, throughout that season, just these little snippets that are telling you, you know, they think this could be serious, and you have to surrender, don't you? You have to trust them and ultimately trust God. But I remember in the hospital when I was just sitting and having to do my deep breathing, and the words of, he will hold me fast, that was my prayer. When I fear my faith may fail, he will hold me fast. Because sometimes you do feel your faith is failing, you know, ultimately I'm saying, I know you're there, God, I believe you, I trust you, I'm so scared, like, so just being able to say that was what I kept going with. I was told that changing Zachary to a bottle was going to be really hard as well, and I had no time to prepare. It was literally the next day. Everyone had said, get plenty bottles, you know, he'll need different teats and it'll just take a bit of adjusting. But that night, actually, we tried him with a bottle, and I tried to give him and had to give him to Paul, and so I was upset over that. But he took it from Paul, and from then on, he took every bottle without an issue. I think he's like us and likes his food, so that's probably why. That was us in hospital. And then there he was, taking his bottle. And just to show how happy he was about it, he wasn't too upset at all. And I think for me, this was significant because I'm talking about a valley, you know, this is a hard time. But even in the valley, there's wee glimmers of light, you know, there's always things that you go, oh, God is good, you know. And so many times I've thought, God says he would give us more than we can handle. And sometimes I think, I don't know if God realises how much I can handle. But these things, you know, Zachary was my priority. So see God allowing him to just transition and take that. That was such a weight off my mind, and something that I was just so grateful for. And I think that is God showing his hand, even in the valley. Oh, I'm still going. Yeah. So most of you will know my mum Elspeth, who's here, and Mum and I are very close. We've got an amazing relationship, and she's supported me through a lot of things. But my maternal mum died of cancer when she was 36, and it was only really when I had Zachary that I became aware of my grief and my fear associated with that loss. I think as I was growing up and thinking, oh, I'm going to be 36, do you know, oh no, is that what's going to happen to me? And then having Zachary and looking at him when he was 8 months, which was the age I was, and thinking, oh my goodness, like, I guess it gave me an awareness of what that must have been like, and it made me a bit fearful of what if that's our story, and what if I don't get to see Zachary grow up. And obviously with the journey we were on, you know, these things were so real to me. And I think that's part of my problem as well. A lot of my fear is grounded on real situations, you know, things I've been through, things my family have been through, and I work as a chaplain, so things I walk with people through, they're real things that do happen, and so I guess it's learning to find your trust in that despite the circumstances. I remember crying out the words of Psalm 13. I love that psalm. And it says, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and day after day have sorrow in my heart?" And I guess I wonder how many other people can relate to that. You know, it might be different circumstances, but I wonder how many of us can say, "God, where are you? You know, have you forgotten me?" I was grateful finding that in the Bible because I felt that gave me permission to be feeling that way. I think sometimes we feel and we're trying to keep up appearances, but actually, see, being able to say, "This is how I feel, God, I feel like you've forgotten me. Where are you?" But I think the thing is to not camp out there, because even in that psalm, it's a short psalm, but it ends with, "But I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation." And that had to become the focus for me. I realised it's okay for me to be saying, "How long, God, is this ever going to end?" As long as I was able to anchor myself and hold on to that belief that I could trust in his unfailing love and that he wouldn't leave me.
I'm sure you all here, like Sue said, can resonate with that kind of going, "How long, Lord? Like, come on, can you hear me here?" But I love the end of the verse, like you said, "But I will trust you," which is super hard. It's not easy to do that. But another crazy chapter. What happened after that?
So physically, the next step for my heart was they fitted a loop recorder, which was like a USB device. So they inserted that into my chest, and it connected to my phone. It was an amazing thing. So when I had these random palpitations, I could record it on my phone, and they sent that straight to the hospital. So actually that gave me a little bit of peace of mind, because I knew that they were able to check if it was dangerous. Again, for me, sometimes it's the responsibility of making the judgment call. Should I be going to hospital? Is this normal? Should I ignore it? Do you know, the pressure of making the right decision? So having that gave me reassurance that the doctors were on it, they were checking it, and they were keeping track of me. So that helped from that perspective with the fear, but the palpitations and the symptoms were still quite severe. So they decided to do a cardiac ablation. So I had to go to the Golden Jubilee and have that procedure, which didn't instantly work, but over time it has, and now my symptoms are much less and not there very often.
So really, in some ways, you've been in a valley of poor health since 2012, really. What happened in September of last year?
So in September I hadn't been feeling well again, and really, do you know, I would struggle to say I felt really well over all that time. Like, I sometimes feel like I just say fine because I can't be bothered saying, "Oh, this is wrong or that's wrong." But in September I started feeling really unwell. I was having tingling down my face, my eye had been feeling funny, and my arm was tingling. So obviously there was a fear that there was a stroke. So I was going up to hospital, but before I went, and again, just to demonstrate how real it is to me, and I think that's it. Even if something you're afraid of, but there's no grounds for it, or it's probably not, when you feel it, it's real. And for me, I felt so unwell and was so afraid that before I left, I went into Zachary's room. He was sleeping, and I took a wee video telling him how much I loved him. And that's because I was scared I'd lose the power of speech. I was scared something would happen and I wouldn't be able to tell him that. So I went up to the hospital and they examined me and ruled out a stroke, which was very reassuring. And I think, like many of us in situations, in my head, I'm like, "Oh God, as long as it's not a stroke, I'll never worry again. You know, I'll never be afraid again." But that's not always possible. But just waiting through all of that, the what ifs were back. Do you know that? What if it's this? What if it's that? And that was really scary. I get signed off work for a couple of weeks, and at the time I thought I'll probably only need a week. I just need a wee rest, and then I'll go back. But I ended up off work for 5 months, and I think the reality was everything had just caught up with me. And I think sometimes someone told me about a book called When the Body Says No, and it was like a light bulb. I thought, that's it. You know, when we're emotionally charged and pushed and stressed, it has a physical effect as well. And I think my body was just going, I can't function at this level anymore. So I needed a lot of rest. I felt really, really vulnerable. I felt like I could break. I thought, I don't know, again, how will I get out of this? How will I be able to recover from this? And just realising the emotional stress and the distress and how that contributed to. And I think it's been the hardest thing because I have always pushed through. So if anything was worrying me or anything going on in my life, I just kept busy. So I'll just do more. I'll just go more places or... that was how I would distract myself from it. And this is probably the first time in my life when I've had to actually stop and go, okay, let me look back, let me reflect over my whole life and look at the situations and the circumstances and the losses and how they have impacted me, and almost make space to meet with people and to talk about these things. And allow myself to grieve, really, to just allow that to go. Sorry, but I was going to say, but I believe that's where the growth takes place, you know, in that brokenness, in that hard place, in the dark valley. I do think that's where my growth has come, and that's where I've learned so much for it. And I think by the grace of God, I am here and I'm still standing, and that's because of Him.
It's been an incredibly tough few, how many months? Kind of seven months. Can you share with us what you've been learning during these last 7 months?
I need another half hour from it.
Snippets then.
And I have to say, some of my learning is not applied yet. You know, I think sometimes we can see what we need to learn, but putting it into practice takes time. And I think recognising how crippling fear can be, I think I had to recognise that. And ultimately recognise that everything's in God's hands and learn to really trust that. I think we know things, don't we? We can know them in our head, but knowing them in our heart and how we live is a different story. And I think for a long time I've known I could give you the right answer, but to actually walk it is what I need to learn to do. And so I'm in this valley and I'm trying to learn that as we go. Learning to surrender. And remember, I'm not walking alone, and I think that's what I can look through. I might not have been able to know God was with me or see or feel or experience or hear, but I knew. And I think when we know that, then we can hold on to that truth. I'm learning to change my what ifs to even ifs. And I think in the Bible there are lots of stories that really inspire me. One of them is Esther, when she says, do you know what, I'll go before the king, and even if I perish, I perish. You know, she had that boldness, she had that courage, and she said, even if, I'll still do it. And then Daniel, do you know, he said, my God can rescue me, but even if he doesn't, he's still God. And I think when we can really grasp that and really believe that in the depth of our heart, that he is God and he is with us and he never leaves us, then I think, you know, that helps. I think we're guilty of saying, just look at the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think sometimes you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I don't know, I've been in tunnels before that are just pitch black, and then you turn the corner and there's the light. And I think it's holding on to that belief that even when we can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, there is a light. And for some of us, do you know, that will be eternity, that will be heaven. If we've got our trust in the Lord and we've accepted him in our life, then that light will be when we arrive in his presence. And while we'd like our valley to end here, imagine the contrast of going from your darkest valley into his presence. I think, wow, amazing. But for other people, our light will come, and it will be healing, or it will be a baby or a marriage or salvation of a family member. Do you know, whatever it is you're praying for, that light can come. But we have to trust God whether we can see it or whether we can. And I think I was just going to say about the song that I've chosen after this. It's called My God Is All I Need, and I think it's about getting to that place where we can say, my God is all I need, regardless of circumstances, regardless of what goes on around us. Jesus is the light. So actually, even in the darkest tunnel where there's no glimmer, he's the light. And if we're holding on to him, then the darkness will not overcome us. Still going.
You're still going.
Zachary is now 4, and I love how the Lord uses children to teach us things. I was in the car with him just the other day, and we were going up to Asda, and he loves the Asda car wash. I hate the Asda car wash because I'm scared. Surprise, surprise. But he was saying to me, "Oh, Mum, can we go through it?" And I'm saying, "No, son, we'll wait till Dad's with us. I'll sit in the back and hold your hand, and you can help me." But he said to me, wait till I find what he said. "If you want to be brave, you have to go through it." And I thought, you know, I don't think we're talking about the car wash anymore. That just felt so poignant for me. You know, if you want to be brave, you have to go through it. And that's our valleys, isn't it? Like, sometimes it's just the only way. It's the only way we'll learn. It's the only way we'll find these things within us. It's when we go through things. And I think it's just trusting as we do that. I've also had to realise that I'm a work in progress. We're guilty of trying to keep up appearances and trying to just pretend we're okay. And I think it's about vulnerability. I think there's real power in vulnerability, that instead of saying I'm not great today, I'm struggling, I'm finding it hard. And I think when one or two of us start doing that, we give permission to others to say, "I'm actually glad you said that because I'm not great either." You know, and we can have unity in that and help carry each other along, because that's what God intended. He didn't intend us to walk this journey alone. We're meant to come alongside each other and carry each other's burdens. And still being honest with God. You know, like that verse said, "How long, Lord?" I encourage you to pray that. I encourage you to pray with an honest heart and express to him exactly what you're feeling. But I encourage you to end that coming back to a trust in your unfailing love. Keep holding on to that, and the more we say it, I think even when we don't feel it, keep saying it, because it is true. I also didn't realise I was a perfectionist, but I set such a high standard for myself. Everything's got to be the best. And I can't attain that, which is what I'm also learning. It means for most of my life I've thought I'm not good enough. You know, I should be better, I should be able to do more, I should be more like someone else. So I was judging myself all the time for falling short of that. And I guess I've just realised, like, I was never going to be perfect, and I was never meant to be perfect. And that's why Jesus had to die. And I think really taking that in and thinking, I'm almost like wasting his sacrifice. You know, he died to take my sin. He died because he knew I wouldn't be good enough. So I really want to take hold of that and live in the freeness that brings, that he carries my burdens, and I'm so grateful for that. But I'm also having to learn and accept that I am made in his image. I am fearfully and wonderfully made, and I am enough. And I think for me to say that publicly really goes against the grain. You know, my default is to say no, or don't ask me, or don't do that, or I won't be able to. I'm having to learn, no, actually that's not the case, because I am made in God's image and I want to honour that. So my greatest learning has been that I need to love, accept and care for myself, not push through, not just keep going, not just say yes to everything. But actually, do what I need to do. Sometimes that will mean no, sometimes that will mean I'm going to rest, because I have to listen to my body and take care of myself. And I guess I hope and pray that that's groundbreaking, because that's not just about me, it's about all of you. And I wonder how many other people think they're not good enough, or think they need to do something to win people's approval, or to earn that we're doing enough, and that we can help people and that we have value, because that's not true. Because every single person here has such value and is loved so much by God, regardless of our circumstances, regardless of our mistakes. And I just really hope that you can take hold of that. And I think when I was reflecting that, I thought, what kind of power would be released from this room if every person knew and accepted their worth, knew that our bodies deserved to rest, knew that it was okay to say no. And I guess it would be just so good to see us doing that, reach out for support and be that support for others too. So yeah, I'm saying that today. I'm saying that I matter. I'm saying that is my biggest learning, that we need to care for ourselves. And in doing that, that's what will help us to serve others. I want to surrender. I want to trust that despite of my challenges and my hardships, that as long as I'm here, that He does have a purpose and a plan for my life. And I want to walk in the fullness of that.
It's just a few things.
Sorry. One last thing, I nearly forgot my picture, but I'm not known for looking after plants very well, so if you're thinking of buying me a gift, the plant's probably not a good choice. But I received this orchid a few years ago, and I actually did better with it than most. It lasted a bit longer, but it ended up looking like this. And when I looked at it, it had one wee bud left, and I thought, oh, I've done it again, I've wrecked it, so let this wee last bud fall and then I'll get rid of it, but at least I tried. But this is how it then looked. How amazing is that? And I just think that is symbolic of us. This is the valley, isn't it? This is us when we are stripped bare and think, I have nothing to give. But God takes that tiny glimpse of hope, that tiny seed, and He makes beautiful things from it. So be encouraged that this will be our final self. This is where we will end.
Thank you so much for sharing with us so bravely from a valley that you're still in. You're still walking it, and we're grateful for the glimmers and little bits of hope that the Lord has given during these last few years. But you're still very much in it. So thank you for being here and sharing it with all of those people out there. Let me just pray for you. Lord, we want to thank you for who you are and for what you've done for us. We thank you that you love us. We thank you that you care for us. We thank you that you have given your word that we can turn to and we can glean hope from. We just thank you for Suze. We thank you that she has a deep love for you. We thank you for Paul and for Zachary that you've blessed her with, Lord. And we just pray for her as she walks this valley that she's in with her health, Lord. We don't know the situation, we don't know the outcome, Lord, but you do. And I just ask that you can give her strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow, Lord. Please give her that. We thank you that she's been willing to share with us this morning. And we just pray that the ladies in here this morning will have been encouraged as well and challenged just from hearing from someone in the midst of a valley. So we thank you for Suze. We just ask that you'll be with her now. We pray for the battle after the battle as she's stood up and shared with us, Lord. The enemy will not like it. So I just pray that you'll be with her in the coming days and pray for my protection around her. So I just thank you for it, and I thank you for her willingness to share. In your name, amen.